Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Molly,
I'm Michael.
and today we are welcomed by a very special guest, Matt Scott, returning back on the pod. He's a host of Pod Friends, The Pride Has Spoken, and the Wrestling Wrap Up. So, welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thrilled to be back. I feel like all season long, especially as your third in the draft, like I've sort of been like having all these arguments with each of you in my head, and we've been beefing, but we haven't been. And it just feels good. This feels a little therapeutic to come together finally. And work through a lot of the strife that I felt toward each of you, depending on who was voted out.
I know. Well,
Good.
here we are now at the final episode, just in a few days, which is exciting. But, Matt, what's been new with you since we last had you on in February?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a great question. You mentioned Pod Friends. I finished my Pod Friends season somewhere around that time, which was nice. And I always encourage people to go, one, subscribe to Pod Friends wherever you get your podcast. Pod Friends is 2 words. It's not the podcast that's Pod Friends, that's 1 word. I think I spelled the right way with 2 words. And
For sure.
also, yeah, I'm just like thrilled. I mean, there's so much more life wise, but you mentioned the Pride Has Spoken. Pride Month is coming up. So I would say to keep an eye out for more interviews through the Pride Has Spoken. No spoilers yet, but I look, it might be the biggest season of the Pride Has Spoken yet. So check that out.
Wow.
And also just have to say, the Pride Has Spoken, not the Pod Has Spoken. That's other people who are also really awesome. So we always have to clarify our names.
Yeah.
Is there anyone you want to call out and clarify? Like, let's chat reality, not like reality TV wrap ups. I don't know.
I don't know, actually. That's a really good question. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to type in
Google.
our name right now and see what else comes up.
Yeah, it's helpful. It's just
I know
helpful to
there's nobody
know.
else with our exact name, but
Good.
no, I don't. There's like Let's Chat Ethics. That's not us.
Oh
We're
yeah,
chatting
let's.
about a show that's very unethical.
I think it's close. Not let's chat ethics. Let's
Yeah.
chat reality.
No, there's really nothing that's comes up right away that I can see that's too close that I would think people would get it confused. But
Good
that's very
job.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, not the Pod Has Spoken. The
Yes.
Pride
No.
Has Spoken.
Yes.
But yeah, it's fun times and always fun to talk Survivor with the two of you.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts overall on the season before we dive more into our draft updates and the predictions we have? We'd love to hear more because we haven't had you on since it's been on. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I will say, and this might be a hot take, I love Survivor. I love Survivor. I love watching it each week. I've really enjoyed this season. Because I'm someone who really I watch for the journey and not the destination. I love the characters, I love the personalities, I love the stories, and out of all the new era seasons, I don't know if I've actually rewatched any of them in full yet, but this one to me will be really fascinating to watch after we know who the winner is, because we did get so many of those character moments. I've also just talked with people recently who are more casual fans who have talked about really loving like Mitch and the representation he provides for folks who are stuttering or stutterers, like people who've talked about Eva and loving everything that she's providing in terms of representing autism. So and this comes as no surprise between the Pod Friends and the Pride Has Spoken of it all, but I just really love the human stories. It's There are those frustrating moments like, oh, I wish so and so would make a move, but I think that's also the fun in like not being in the game and watching the game and recognizing that it's a lot easier to judge it from the couch than it is when you're actually out there. So I've enjoyed it. It's a fun season, but the thing that's kind of put a damper on it for me has just been some of the feedback from the peanut gallery, so to speak, about just like how quote unquote boring it is. I get it, but I just like watching Survivor when we were able to get it.
I always feel that way about like Bravo shows where I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying
Yeah.
the season. And then I see like on Twitter, everyone's bashing it. Everyone's bashing every person on it. And then it
Mm-hmm.
just makes me enjoy it less because then I'm like, oh, well, maybe they're right. Like maybe, like it just gets in my
Yeah.
head. And I do feel like that's some with this season. And I was saying on our last episode, like, I think this is a season that's going to age really well because we kind of get some distance from it, as you can watch it on a binge, like you kind of get through those couple of slower weeks like a lot quicker. Then I think it'll age really well, and I think people will start to be like, it wasn't so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we did get some really great characters in this season. So I think that's been a big proponent of how, like, I mean, obviously Survivor is a great show, but I think just the people in the cast, like, that's what makes it great too.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch. Even if there weren't as many gameplays happening, like, all the people are great.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a big part of the stories of the people, if that makes sense. Like, I do think it's really interesting that we have had Eva and Joe, and they're playing very much like their characters would suggest that they play. And then you have Kyle and Camilla, which is also fascinating. And then this parallel between the two pairs, and then Mitch is also there. So it's like, it's fascinating to me. And I completely agree that it'll be interesting to watch back, especially once we know more of the story, because I think
Yeah.
everyone starts wanting there to be certain stories. Like, so many people I know drafted Kevin as their winner pick and had this whole arc built out for him. And that's just not. Wait, who had Kevin in the draft? Did I have Kevin? No,
No,
I don't
I
Michael
think so.
did.
did. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, Michael, you had Kevin drafted. You might have seen the arc, and I think that's fair. But
I did.
sometimes people just in this. Maybe I've mentioned this before, but like this also applies to professional wrestling, which I talk about as you reference. That like when the arc doesn't go the way that people want it, it's natural to be disappointed. It's all good, but it's nice to be surprised too. I think like the surprises are where we can have the most fun, rather than being right about, which person we think will win.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Well, speaking of the draft, let's get into who we each have left and who we had on our teams to start with. So for me, I have Kyle remaining, but I also had drafted Star, Bianca, Stephanie, Say, and Chrissy. So I remember calling out that I had all females except for Kyle, and then now Kyle is the only remaining.
Oh
So
my God, that's right.
yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
But I love Kyle, so I am rooting for him. And Michael has three remaining. He has Eva, Joe, and Mitch on his team.
Mm-hmm.
So he had Kevin originally, Cedric, as well as Charity. But that's a strong number you got there, Michael.
And I still don't know if I'm gonna win. I mean, we'll get into it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll
Yes.
see.
We'll see. And Matt, you have Camilla remaining, but you had drafted Shaheen as your number one, which sad to see him go last week, as well as also Thomas, Mary, Justin, and David as well. So you had a very male heavy team, but now you only have Camilla left. So
Yeah, I
Wow,
know.
that's
Look at
crazy.
me. I knew what I was doing with just
Hmm.
Mary and Camilla, right? So I don't
Queens.
yeah, it's been fun watching too, because I think there was one week where I was like ahead in terms of having the most players on my team. That very quickly changed. So look how the tables turn, and Michael is in control here, allegedly. If
Ooh,
you if you're if
allegedly.
you're if you're looking at the numbers here, it
Yeah,
makes sense.
just purely based on numbers.
but it's
But
good that
no,
we
yeah,
all have at least one person. So anyone's game right
yeah.
now, basically.
It was
Mhm.
But
really close for a long time. Like it kept like
Every
getting
week.
even. Like we each lost one, and then we each lost a second one, and then like it was really neck and neck for a long time there. So I think we each did a pretty good job.
I will also say that I'm gonna definitely go back at some point after the season's over, because I feel like this is because of you two. This was the first season where I really went through and like in my head ranked who I thought would be the winners, potential
Hmm.
winners, and where everyone else would fall. And I don't know if that I don't know how well that worked out. So, or maybe it did work out really well, but I'd have to look back at my notes from 3 months ago. But yeah, this is fun. We're still in it. Camilla, if you're out there, if you're listening, do it for me for this draft.
I know. It is exciting because it's interesting because we also, I remember listening back to our episode and we're like, well, they have a great personality, but are they going to do well in the game? And like some of those people, I think, did surprise me in that way that I was like,
Hmm.
oh, maybe I didn't think they were going to make it there. Like, I really didn't think maybe Mitch was going to make it as far as he did, but obviously he's now in the finale, so he obviously did it. So it's funny to hear
Yeah.
back like what we thought originally. So let's get into a little bit
Yeah.
of that. We can discuss each of the final five, our first impressions, and then our current thoughts of them and what we think will happen. So let's start off with Eva. So preseason, Michael had shared that he thought Eva would be a social butterfly and get along with everyone on her tribe and make it far. So, what are your thoughts now, Michael, on that pick, and how likely do you think it is that Eva can make it to the final?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of worked out. I mean, that kind of does track with what how Eva played. Yeah, Eva was my first pick, and from the Logi tribe, and I really thought that Eva was kind of gonna be like the little sister for everyone. She was the youngest on the season. Like I kind of just felt like she was gonna take up that role of like everyone is just kind of like take her under their wing, and it really ended up being Joe specifically that took her under
Mm,
his wing a bit. But yeah, I think that Eva. I don't know so much though that like she was a social butterfly. I think she was very much like within her clique, and
hmm.
that was who she stuck with the whole season. And I mean, we saw it in not this past episode. It was, oh no, it was this past episode where she was like, I'm stuck on this island with mom and dad. Like, it was like when she
Hmm.
wasn't with her people, she didn't really know how to like talk to the others. And so that doesn't exactly track with necessarily how I thought her personality, her game was going to be. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that she necessarily will get into it, but I don't know that she necessarily has like a strong chance of winning the game. But I do think that she was able to get here very easily without much struggle. And I mean, she was
Mm.
able to just kind of not use any of these millions of advantages that she had and still made it as far as she has, which is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, for me, Eva was sort of in the middle, and I don't remember thinking that she would be like, the strongest player or the weakest player. And of course, there was so much potential that I think she had physically going to the game as an athlete, but there was also this other piece of her story, which we've seen highlighted so much of navigating autism. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, something that I really appreciated seeing and getting showcased on Survivor because we haven't had that showcased. Now, the thing with Eva is that, and again, we will get into it, but I think she's this really likable social player, and that was sort of what I was perceiving looking into the season. And yet, it's really interesting to see how that manifested, where the Eva and Joe relationship was the key part of the story. Again, there's more we'll talk about when it comes to Eva, but the thing that I guess would be most interesting to me if we had Eva in a different season that wasn't season 48 or a different configuration of people is seeing her play from the bottom as opposed to being in such a dominant position, because I think that changes the perception of her in a lot of ways. And I almost wish that there was more adversity in the game that she was playing as opposed to her being really well aligned and not having to maybe struggle as much as she would have along the way. Not that I want to see her struggle, but I feel like a lot of people would have gravitated to her more a bit if she was actually an underdog in the context of like the dynamics of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it would be definitely interesting to see that like flipped for her game, like
Hmm.
not having it so easy, but that's how the season worked.
Yeah, like imagine if
Yeah.
she was on Vula and like she was losing every week. And like even if
Hmm.
she was in a good position, just the fact of having to continually go to tribal that early on and scramble and have to figure it out in that way. I think that would have been really interesting because she just happened to end up on that tribe that never really went to tribal for a long time. And so we
Hmm.
we didn't have to see her game until she already had this very, very solid group.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting to see Eva here, but do you think that if she does make it to the final three that she has any win equity, Michael?
Um Not really. No, I mean, like, I think she has a case for herself. I do. I think that's a really strong argument to say, look, I had all of this and I never had to use it, any of it. And I was still able to make it to this point. Now, the counterpoint to that is nobody really thought that she had much of a chance of winning, so they weren't scared of her, so they might as well let her, keep it. But I think that that's something that she could say is, look, my social game was strong enough that I was able to stick with this group. They were loyal to me, and I was loyal to them, and I had all of these advantages that I never had to use because I never was in a position where I felt nervous enough to have to use it, and I was right. So I had control of this game for as long as they did, and so. I think she has that argument, but I just don't know unless she's maybe against like Mitch and Camilla. I mean, maybe, but even like you have Joe as a cheerleader on the jury in that case. You have David, who's probably a cheerleader for Eva in that case. Like maybe the two of them can get a couple other people to convince them. I don't know. I guess there is a route, but I don't necessarily see it being very likely.
Yeah. I would say that I think that the place where I feel like Eva sort of falls short is in who she included and who she didn't. Like she was so clear about Joe being her bestie, and I think that's fine, except if any of us, like if the two of you were on here just talking about how great you are and how close you are, like that's going to make me feel some type of way,
Right.
even if that's the reality, having that bond. And so when I think about the jury and I think about, David, sure, there was a bond with Eva a bit. There was, but like with Star gave Eva that idol, but look what happened to Star. Look what happened to Shaheen at the hands of all of them. And I sort of don't see places where Eva brought in other people. Was it Mary that Eva explicitly was like, "Hey, you're cool, we're cool, but I'm not going to give you an idol. Like I'm not going to help you out." I don't know if that's great
Mm,
gameplay, and that's where
yeah.
I think that just casting more of a warm light onto people or making people feel more special could have been something that Eva did. Like that was, I think, the flaw in her game, regardless of what trinkets she's had in her pockets. Being able to say, "Oh, made people feel good," is not something that she did in any notable way, as compared with Joe or the other players, especially.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of Joe, let's discuss him. So, Michael was debating whether or not to pick Joe or Thomas as his last pick from Loggy, but went with Joe because he felt like that he would be better fit with the tribe and be helpful in challenges,
Mm.
which would prevent him from being an early boot. So, I felt like that's pretty accurate there, Michael. But what are your thoughts from your preseason opinions of him now?
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, sure, I'm glad I made that choice. Yeah, I think that was pretty accurate. I think that he clearly was a very helpful asset in challenges. But I don't know that that's necessarily. I mean, obviously, he wasn't an early boot because Loki never went to tribal, so that was kind
Mm.
of. I mean, I guess being an asset in challenges, I guess probably helped that. But no, I mean, yeah, he fit in perfectly in that tribe. Obviously, he found Eva there, and they have continued to be a duo throughout. But no, I think that Joe just kind of his game overall, he has just been this leader of this huge alliance that has been. He's just this whole thing is loyalty and integrity and honesty, and I think when you keep preaching that, I think that just kind of becomes the reality of what everybody values in the season. And I think that's what I love about Survivor is that every season these people figure out what is valuable to them this season. And I think
Mm,
Joe was and David were such a big proponent of that way of playing that it just kind of became what everybody views as a good game. There's somebody who's the most loyal, the most honest. And so I think in that way, Joe has truly defined this season. But I don't know that that is necessarily going to get him the win because I think that it makes people feel like when you vote them out and you have said that you were so loyal to them, someone like David, someone like Shaheen, I could see them being bitter towards Joe specifically because he's the one that's been preaching it. So I do
mm.
worry about that, but for him, but I think overall he has truly been like the main character of season 48.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Matt?
Ugh. It's so interesting. Like going into the season, what I really thought of Joe, and I mean, he was one of the last two picks on Loggy. I remember we were talking about how strong of a tribe Loggy seemed overall. So that wasn't, an indictment of Joe at all. But I really thought like he would go in, bond with Bianca or something like that, and like go, just have this game that was that like Papa Bear type of archetype. And what I think was so impressive about Joe is that he was this immunity like challenge beast in the game. He still has more opportunities to win immunity along the way. I would be almost surprised if he didn't win immunity in the finale at some
We'll tie the
point, at
record
least.
if he does.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. I mean, it's so fascinating because I felt like in the season, everyone turned to Joe to give their information and share their plans to the point where if I'm looking at it, I'm saying, oh, Joe's like fine. Joe's safe in this game. Everyone trusts Joe. But it's again that thing where he had that bond with Eva that was really clear, and yet nobody targeted him. Like it's so
Crazy.
impressive. He won immunity, but when he didn't win immunity, people didn't try to take him out, and that says a lot. Honestly, he is is he my top pick to win the game? I think so, especially just with his story and everything with his sister and just how much he shared there. I could see it, but again, I worry a bit about one. I think it's kind of cruel if Survivor, if he doesn't win, and we got the kind of storytelling that we did. It just feels a little uncomfortable that they've highlighted Joe as this main character and then he wouldn't win.
Yeah.
But I could see again, similar to the thing with Eva and Joe, like icing people out a little bit. Nobody on that jury should feel closer to Joe than Eva, and Joe's been very clear about that. And then again, the piece of preaching loyalty, like it's not. I don't feel like Joe really played the game in a way where he was like, "Okay, you're the one who's going out this week, so I'm so sorry. Like, just we're gonna make a dinner for you. We're gonna do a celebration." It wasn't that. So I could imagine people feeling some way about that, but I mean, in this season, he played such a dominant game that, unless the jury's super bitter, he should win it, I think, kind of. So that's my thought on Joe. I'm so confused. I'm like, it either wins or they hate him and he doesn't win. Like,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
no, that's my
yeah.
debate in my head too, because it's like the edit makes me think that Joe should win. But then when I actually think about it, I think, oh, well, I mean, we know David's bitter towards him, and then we know that Cheyenne just was blindsided, and it'll be like, what, 2 days later at Final Tribal? Like, he won't have had very long to, like, cool down from it. And then it's
Uh,
like I don't know.
mm-mm.
Like I go back and forth, but I think that I said this
Yeah.
on maybe like last week or something that I think there's a chance that this edit that we're getting from Joe, if it's not a winner's edit, is an edit in preparation for season 50 where he comes back and has like a redemption arc.
Do you think there's a world where somehow, because I don't think this edit feels good if Joe makes it to the final three, but like, could he lose and fire something? Like,
A
I
fireman losing at fire
yeah,
would be
I mean,
wild.
making a fire, it's
Yeah,
complicated.
true.
Like, that's not what
True.
they do.
That's true.
Yeah, I
That's
could
quite the
see him
opposite.
losing a fire, but I don't know. It's so tricky with
I
Joe
don't
because
know.
I do feel like the edit we've gotten like sets him up to be this like ideal winner pick, but then because of that, it's like, well, what's gonna actually happen? Like if he loses immunity, like are they gonna target him? Like that's obviously now at this point, everyone knows he's such a big threat. Like you have to go for Joe now. So it's just only Eva wouldn't go for Joe. So it would just be like the rest of them would. But I don't know. It's just a hard one to think about right now because like we just don't know who's gonna win the immunity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe obviously could be a big contender of that. But I love Joe, but I also am more into Kyle, obviously, because Kyle's on my team. But if Joe wins, I would be happy with it too.
I'm gonna just call it here, and I might be entirely wrong, but either Joe makes it to final three and wins, or he loses fire, and then that's his story. That's just
Yeah.
based on the narrative that we've gotten. That to me would feel like that's what they're doing, but I wouldn't put it past Survivor to like let Joe lose in the end and give us this story, and then like the casual audience hates the jury, hates the winner, hates
Yeah.
everyone but Joe. So
Right.
I'm
No, the Facebook
yeah,
crowd is just gonna like go
yeah.
crazy if Joe loses.
They will.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like I feel like we talked about this last season a lot with Rachel, where it was like going into the finale, it was like, well, who could possibly win other than Rachel? Like she has such a
Mm-hmm.
perfect winners at it. And then I think like I almost convinced myself that no, it's almost too obvious and like Sam's gonna win. And then like it just ended up being exactly kind of what most people expected. So like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're trying to like convince ourselves out of it being Joe because it feels too obvious almost, but that might just be what happens, and they're gearing us towards a relatively satisfying ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what happens. But next up, we also have Camilla in our final five here. So, Matt, she was your pick, and you chose Camilla as your first Siva pick because she's a super fan, and you're captivated by her preseason interview, and you also noted that you compared her compared herself to Erica, who was a winner of season
Mm-hmm.
41. So, what were your thoughts now looking back on that prediction and how you think she's played the game thus far?
Yeah, I think in retrospect, the thing that's fascinating about Camilla comparing herself to Erica is that Erica's interesting in that we got such a quiet edit for Erica, but she had to be out there forming the different relationships. I swear I need to watch that back at some point to try to really wrap my head around what was truly going on with Erica,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's a huge difference between playing a really quiet and secretive, lamb type of game and instead like being like I guess like what I'm saying is Erica was under the radar for us watching, but clearly she was good enough for everyone to vote for her. And
Right.
I wonder if Camilla is just too under the radar on the island also, seeming like she's been on the bottom, seeming also with her relationship with Kyle, at least to us, that Kyle's calling more of the shots. I don't see a great chance of Camilla winning here unless there's some world where like Kyle and Joe are voted out and then it's Camilla, Eva, and Mitch in the end. Like that would be the scenario for me to see Camilla winning. But I don't know. I really appreciated Camilla in this game. Like loved her personality and how fun she was throughout. But it's a really tough game to play, and I think it's an interesting lesson for anyone who's going out to play Survivor. Like, how do you make your presence known while also not making yourself a threat? But then, how do you use that in the end to prove that you were enough of a threat that you should have been voted out, and so people vote for you in the end because they respect your game? Like, it's my brain hurts thinking about it, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's where Camilla falls short a little bit, and again, I'm not, we'll see if people feel like she's someone who's good to take to the end, because Kyle obviously would want Camilla in the end just because of their bond. I do think Eva and Joe are fascinating in that they did vote with Camilla and Kyle. So maybe they take out Mitch or something like that. But Camilla, to me, just like her only path to victory is if somehow Joe and Kyle don't end up in the end, which feels unlikely to me at this point. So sorry, Camilla. Thanks for playing, but maybe you should have played a little bit louder.
I think you're spot on in saying that Camilla's game is very hard to play because having this secret alliance with Kyle the entire game and keeping it a secret as long as as long as they have, which is actually crazy. Like I can't really
Mm-hmm.
think of another like secret alliance on Survivor like this that still in Final 5 is somehow a secret. And I think that's really hard to do and also play an open enough game where people respect it and understand and know what you've done enough because you can't be seen with your number one ally. And so it's like how are they supposed to understand what you've done when they can't understand the most important part of your game? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's hard because then it's going to be if she makes it to final 3, she's going to have to do all this explaining right before everyone's voting and it's like they don't have time to wrap their minds around it. And
Yeah.
it's like when they see it on TV, they'll probably be like, "Oh yeah, like wow, she actually did do a lot more than I thought." But then it's too late. So I think it's really, really hard to play this game that she's playing, but it's interesting because I think it's a very unique type of game that we don't see often.
I think
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is just like Camilla needs Kyle on the jury and
Yeah,
sooner rather than later to explain what Camilla's doing, but that's not what she's working toward.
yeah, I think if Kyle gets out in Final Five, that's wonderful for Camilla because that gives at least a couple days for him to explain this to the jury and have them going in understanding already that the way that she's been playing before they get to just her speech. So I agree. I think if really if I'm Camilla, I'm trying to probably put Kyle on the jury this week.
Yeah. Well, I love Camilla as well, but also I'm not sure at her chances of winning it all just because of how quiet her game has been. But we'll see what happens with Kyle. So, speaking of Kyle, he was my first overall pick from Siva. And
Ooh.
I thought that he would build good alliances and he would be likable. And I also noted how I thought that it was good that he was going to be lying about being a lawyer because I feel like also the lawyers in the past have done well when they lie about it and make it to the end or make it at least pretty far in the game. And he was lied and kept himself in the game this long. So I think it's been good for him. So I think my predictions there were pretty good. He also has those strong alliances and he has the secret alliance with Camilla as well. So he's got a lot of people on his side, which is really good here for his game. And I think throughout the season, Kyle is just because he's been working with like multiple sides, like I think that's also helped him prolong him in the game, just knowing having more ears on hearing more conversations happening and overall like what's going on in tribes. So I think he's been doing a great job and I want him to win the game overall just because he is on my team, but also because I think he's played a great game and I think he'll be able to pitch really well at a final tribal just because he's obviously a lawyer and knows how to put a case together. But yeah, those are my overall opinions. But Matt, what are your thoughts on Kyle?
I remember thinking to myself, or maybe even talking about with you, I'm like, I did not believe in Kyle all that much. And I specifically remember thinking, like, you're going to pretend to be a teacher, which you did for like 2 years, even though you've been a lawyer this whole time. And my thought with this is that the people who put up that shield or put up that lie or that facade just sometimes come off as inauthentic. And Kyle did a really good job at pushing back against that. Like the one person who was sort of sussing him out seemed to me to be David at one point, and yet that clearly didn't work out for David. So I mean I feel good about Kyle here in the end. Like if it's not Joe, it's Kyle taking the win in this case. So interesting though to think about because Kyle had all of these different bonds and relationships, I feel like similar to Joe. They played the game side by side in so many ways. I guess I just don't really understand like what makes I don't really understand what would make Kyle more respectable to people than Joe in the end, but maybe it's like the lack of preaching a loyal game. Like Kyle to me seems just authentic, strategic, but also someone who people want to play with. And in that way, I would say that Kyle's game is more impressive because Joe sort of created this culture that doesn't feel all that authentic, especially when you look at his actions and voting people out. Kyle just played the game pretty straight up and maneuvered really well. And I think everyone seemed to like him along the way and bond with him. I think specifically of like the conversation, I believe that was between Kyle, Camilla, Joe, and Shaheen, maybe early on about their identities in the game. And so I'm rooting for Kyle. I I want him to win. I also am not excited for the Facebook reaction, but that's not my problem. I mean, I think Kyle would be happy to have $1 million regardless of what Facebook thinks. So he could probably, like, yeah, $1 million is enough to get over social media hate. I'm assuming.
Oh
So
yeah. No, I
I
think
think I wouldn't know.
yeah. True. Me too.
Mm.
But I think that Kyle is actually my most likely winner pick. And I over Joe. And I think it's because I just think that Kyle's going to be able to explain his game a lot better than Joe. And I think that his game is harder. Like I think he's had to play a harder game than Joe because everyone's just kind of followed Joe. Like he's been the leader of this alliance. And look, that says a lot about him that people are willing to follow him. But I think in a lot of to the jury, I think that's going to seem like he had a very easy ride to the end. And he never really had to scramble. He never really had a lot of challenges. And I think that Kyle having to maintain his close secret alliance with Camilla and
Mm.
maintain this alliance with the five and like seem like he's someone who Joe is like Joe seems to trust Kyle way more than he trusted David, way more than
Hmm.
he trusted Cheyenne. Like he seems to anytime Kyle says something to Joe, he believes it. He takes it as truth, even if like to us it seems like is he believing this? Like it seems like in the end he always goes with Kyle and he believes him. And I think Eva even said something like I trust Kyle more than I trust Cheyenne last week. I think is what she said when Joe kind of explained the what he was being told. So I think that it seems like Kyle is just somebody who's really built these incredible relationships that people just trust him, and I think that that says a lot about him. And I think in the final three that he's going to be able to use that and be like, look, I was able to pull off and make what I wanted to happen every time in these crucial situations. And to put it in Big Brother terms, I almost feel like this would be like Paul versus Josh. Like Paul is kind of the
Mm.
Joe, where like I think people like followed him for so long in the game, but then in the end they just felt stung by him and they felt like he lied to them and they felt betrayed. And Josh didn't make those promises, and so even though he was kind of just as close with them, they were a lot more willing to vote for him than they were for Paul. So I think that it could be a similar situation if they both make it to the final three.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like overall, like, I mean, Joe, he's had such like control in the game, but I think because of Kyle, like more of like that underdog kind of speak that like that always goes well with the jury too. Of like, well, yeah, like I made this work, I made it here, and it was harder, even though it wasn't really the underdog, but more compared to Joe was. But overall, we'll have to see what happens if he makes it there to the final three. But last but not least, we have Mitch. So, Michael, you also had Mitch on your draft team. He was your second Siva pick, and you thought that a lot of people would gravitate towards him on a personal level and just like him overall. So, what are your thoughts now on Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, I think people love Mitch. Like that kind of worked
Hmm.
out. I think that Mitch is just like he's a frustrating watch because he keeps saying, "I can't make a move yet. I don't trust Star enough to make a move," and it's just like, oh, you don't have to trust someone like for the rest of the game in order to make a move with them this one week. I feel like I've said that every week that we've talked for the last 5 weeks, but that it's just like it's frustrating, but it's worked out for him and that he's still there. And look, I don't think he has much win equity, but I think that he is the type of player that is going to make it far almost every time he plays, but is just he doesn't have that last gear. He doesn't have that ability to like make the big moves that are going to get you the win, that are going to make your game seem strong enough that the jury's willing to vote for you. And so I just feel like he could play. I feel like right now I'm like comparing him on the Diary Room podcast, but to like another player. But
Yeah.
I just think that yeah, like he is frustrating to watch, but he is going to make it far kind of every time because I think he's just so likable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the game is, as we know, and this is the thing that's really tricky about Survivor, is that the game isn't to make it to the end, but it's to win. And those are two very different things. Because there are so many different zero vote finalists who we could point to who just didn't stand a chance of winning, but still made it to the end. And like to your point, Michael, might make it to the end time and time and time again. That's the unfortunate thing about Mitch because he is so likable. He was really strong in challenges, I think, throughout the season, I would say. And it's just this question of like, what did you do in the game to get the win? And I'm going to be really watching Mitch in the finale because I wonder if that's going to be when he tries to strike. Like he's made it so close, but he's going to need to build up a resume of some sort toward the end. What I kind of don't want to see, honestly, is Mitch in the final three because I just don't want to hear him try to argue the case for his
Yeah.
game just because I don't see it there. But he is so lovable. Like I almost want him to avoid the pain of the final three because he's so likable. But we'll see. I just will say, I assume, especially after the last vote, that like the four of Eva, Joe, Camille, and Kyle would stay loyal to each other again and
Yeah.
vote out Mitch because Mitch has been on the bottom. But uh, we'll see. I mean, I think Mitch will go out at 5. That's my assumption, but could be wrong. Mitch could also win immunity.
He's
That
strong in the
would then be
challenges, yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
No, I
Mitch could
think
win
that's the most
immunity, and then
yeah.
maybe Joe goes home, maybe Kyle goes home, maybe Camilla goes home, maybe Eva. I guess that's what would happen if Mitch won immunity. But uh, yeah, curious to see how he shows up in the finale.
Yeah, no, I think that that seems the most likely. If he doesn't win immunity, I think he's out of 5. I just don't know why, like,
Hmm.
Camilla and Kyle would go any other way and try to take out Joe or Eva there. Because then you're just putting a cheerleader on the jury for the other one. And so I think it's almost like better for them to just kind of like keep it an easy vote this time, get to 4, and play it out from there, see what happens. But,
Does it? I'm curious if it does it seem like to either of you that Camilla and Kyle or Eva and Joe could pick up Mitch in that final 3 and then vote out one of the other pair? I don't know if they would try that, but
he's
from
definitely the
Camille and
swing,
Kyle,
yeah.
yeah, I do wonder if Camille and Kyle especially would try to pick up Mitch to take out either Joe or Eva.
But I don't know that it's beneficial to get out Joe or Eva here. I don't know. Like, I guess it
Mm,
may be, but like, I just think at that point it's like, then unless the other one goes home, then now you've just put a cheerleader for the other one on the jury who has like days now to hype up their game to the rest of the jury. And
hmm.
like, if you get them out at 4, then it's like, I don't know that they have time at that point to really like, promote the other one enough to like get in anyone's heads. But I
It
don't know.
Yeah, it depends what they're thinking about, though, right? Because if they're thinking about who's on the jury, that's one thing. But if they're thinking about, okay, who, like I want to have my partner with me going to the final four, and then I don't want to sit next to Joe and Eva at the end. This is so fascinating. Like this is a really interesting final five, if you ask me.
It is.
Especially
No,
if
it really
Mitch
is.
does win immunity, that would be chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is just gonna be an exciting end, but who do you think is the most likely final three? Matt, we'll start with you.
Oh, don't do that to me. I'm gonna go with not Mitch. I'm going to go with Kyle, Joe, and Eva. I don't know. It's
No, I
because
agree.
the other factor of this that's really tough is fire making, where I like last week I was thinking about it like, oh, if Eva's in fire making, she's gonna be amazing at it. And then I thought to myself, but maybe she wouldn't be great at it. Like I don't
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not clear on that. But that's the thing that gets so complicated. It's like who's actually good at making fire? I would think that Joe and Kyle could do that. I also assume Joe might win immunity. Maybe I'll bring Eva. So I'm gonna go with Joe, Eva, and Kyle, and then maybe that's how Kyle takes the win.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's the most likely final three. I think that, yeah, I think they're going to get out Mitch at 5. Then I feel like Joe's probably most likely to win immunity there, takes Eva to final three, makes Camilla and Kyle make fire against each other. Kyle, I guess, probably wins that. And then, yeah, I think you got your final three of Joe, Eva, and Kyle. And that's an interesting final three. It is an interesting final three because I'm interested to see how Joe and Eva kind of differentiate their games from one another, given that they've
Mm-hmm.
been so tight at the hip all season long. Is the jury going to kind of feel like they can't decide between those two, so they just give it to Kyle? I don't know. Like, So I think that would be I think we have a lot of potentially very interesting final three scenarios, which could
Yeah.
make it a maybe less exciting season for some people and giving them an exciting ending at the very least.
Mm.
I know. I'm excited to see what the jury decides because obviously we also have talked about how maybe they are going to be bitter against Joe with getting him out or Joe getting them out and preaching that he was so loyal and honest throughout the game. So we'll have to see what happens there. But do you think that there's a fan favorite for Sia's prize given out this season? Or if we had Sia's prize given out this season, who do you think would have won that, Michael?
Okay, who is Sia? I feel like Eva would probably get it. I think Mitch would probably get some. Um, who else?
Maybe Joe.
Maybe Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Sia's
Maybe Star.
yeah.
Star. Maybe.
Maybe Star
If
would
she
get
made it further.
like 10,000, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, give her a little
A
bit.
small Sia prize.
Yeah.
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 But
Oh,
no
Sia, come
longer.
back.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right?
Did CBS did the show make her stop or did she just voluntarily stop doing it? I can't remember.
I think it was voluntary. I don't think
Yeah.
you could make Sia stop
Yeah, I don't
giving
know how they
people
could do
money.
that really, but I wonder
No.
if they liked her doing it or didn't like her doing it because yeah, I don't know.
It probably got weird because you could imagine the meta of it where people are going in like Sia's going to love me in my
Yeah.
story. And then, you leave with your Sia prize. And so many people are winning it. So many people won prizes from Sia in the last few seasons, which
A lot.
I really appreciate, like honoring the importance of people's stories and all that. But it's fine. Like it's tough when people are a little bit meta gaming, like
Hmm.
trying to win the Sia prize as opposed to winning the game.
I feel like Banu was like the tip of the iceberg there. Like if someone just wanting to, steal a million hearts and he is probably being one of those.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know, but I feel like we missed out on the opportunity to have someone go out and constantly drop Sia references along the way just to
Oh gosh,
win the
yeah.
prize.
Yeah, like, having like a Charlie Ben like battle of songs and having to Sia be one of
Hmm.
those instead of Taylor Swift or
Yeah.
That would have been
I'm sure
good.
if this was Big Brother, we would have seen that like every season, just like on the feeds of just people being like, who do you think's gonna win the Sia prize? Like, I think I have a good chance of winning the Sia prize. Like, I
Oh my
bet
gosh.
this.
Yes.
Fun times.
Well, as the season comes to a close, how do you think this will be remembered, Michael?
I think that this will be remembered as the loyalty, honesty, integrity season very much. But I do think that we are right now kind of because we've been so entrenched in this post-emerge for so long. I feel like we forget how great the pre-merge was, and I think that as people like kind of watch it back, looking back, kind of like I said earlier, like I think that people will be like, "Wow, that pre-merge really was great." Like I think that we might say that this was the worst post-merge of the new era, but on the other hand, I think it was the best pre-merge of the new era. So I think that as we kind of like get further away from it, I think we'll be able to appreciate that a lot more. And if we have a strong ending here, then I think that it's still in a lot of ways will be kind of this like honesty integrity season, but I think that that won't necessarily be like such a bad thing.
Yes. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I do think it'll age like a fine wine, but part of that is that I think it'll take time to appreciate. Because if we really think back to a number of the seasons that maybe people love the most, like one of the things that really helps is having those returning players come back and prove themselves and build out their own legacies, and
Yeah.
that sort of lifts up the other seasons they've been part of. So I think this is a really fun one, and I do feel like this is a season that stings, especially when you're watching and you're like, you go from like hating Say at the beginning, but like really loving and rooting for Say, and then she's not there on the jury, or like I feel like that's the part that's hard about the season in the real time. But I do think in retrospect, especially once people know what happened, like all of those same moments will be incredible. Mary is incredible. Like Shaheen's a fun character. There's the chicken and waffles song, and
Fried chicken
stars
and waffles.
raps
Fried chicken
stars.
and waffles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
Stars
love
wrapped.
I love that. I love fried chicken and waffles. It's awesome. Cedric being chaotic along the way, and again, lots of greatness pre-merge. But I also just think like the Eva Joe dynamic, Kyle Camilla dynamic is really poetic. So I think it'll age well. It's also hard, just as a total side note on the new era, that we don't have like individual season themes and names, and it's just the
Yes.
numbers. So I think just broader question on how the new era will age, but I love it.
Yeah, I think what you said about like, a lot of seasons, and I mean, sorry for all the Big Brother references these last two episodes, but like Big Brother 16, I think is a great example of a season that in real time everyone kind of hated. But
Hmm.
when you think about it now, it's like it has Nicole Franzel who won later
Right.
on. You have Amber Bozotra who like made a name for herself on the challenge and won a season. Like you have Derek, of course. You have Cody who ended up winning. Like, and when you think about it now, it's 10 years later, 11 years later, it's like you have all these amazing people that have created such a legacy. And I think, like, yeah, if season 48 ends up having a bunch of people who end up, like, going on to other seasons and doing things, I'm sure we'll look back on this season a lot differently than we do now.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's overall we had obviously pre-merge like so much strategy, so much going on in that, and that I think we had such high hopes what was going to happen. Then when the merge actually was going on, and we didn't really see as much gameplay as maybe we wanted to, but as we keep on saying, like as a whole, like the season was a great season, and it will be remembered in fond memories. And we gotta look back and be thankful for the journey, not just
Right.
the
Hmm.
specific moments at a time.
Smile
Hmm.
because it happened. Don't cry
Yeah.
because it's over. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us to be back and talking all about Survivor and our draft updates. So, let's, as a last plug, let's let us know where we can listen to you and follow you on social media.
Yeah, Matt Scott GW on all platforms. Shout out to Blue Sky and Instagram and the like. But I would also just encourage folks again to follow Pod Friends. That's 2 words, Pod Friends. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Uh, and the Pride has spoken. Not the pod has spoken. The Pride has spoken. Check that out, subscribe, and you could expect very fun conversations and episodes coming up throughout Pride Month, throughout June.
Yes,
Coming
and
right
it's
up.
here before we know it. I know, just a couple weeks away.
Hmm.
Well, thanks so much for listening, everyone. And we're excited to watch the finale coming out just tomorrow night, as this is released on Tuesday. So we're excited to see what happens, if our predictions are maybe right or wrong. But be sure to follow us as well on social media at Let's Chat Reality and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you so much for listening.
Bye, everyone.